Hi guys, it's Coach Anthony back at you with another edition of Animate, bringing chess to life. Time to test how well you know the rules of castling. And if you haven't watched the castling video already, I suggest you do watch it. There are links in the description box below. Let's go. So, first position, white to play. Pause the video and work out if the white team can castle, and most importantly, why or why not. I'm back. Let's check the answer. The white team can castle. We see that the white king is still on its home square, meaning it hasn't moved. And we notice the white rook is still on its home square of h1 and it hasn't moved either. We also notice that the space between the king and the rook is clear, meaning there's no bishop or knight sitting there. So that means on the white's first move, it can hop 2 squares towards the rook and the rook can sit next to it. So let's see that in action, just like that. Awesome. On to the second position. Black to play. Pause the video and work out if the black team can castle. Remembering why or why not is very important. Let's check the answer. Well, we've got the space between the king and the rook clear. We've got the king on its home square and we've got the rook on its home square, meaning it hasn't moved. So we should be able to castle. Hope you spotted the sneaky bishop sitting on a3, which covers a critical square that the king has to pass through, which is the square f8. So what we see is bishop covering the square f8, so the king is not allowed to go to any square where it can be in check. So the answer is no, the black team cannot castle. Fantastic. On to the next position, black to play. Pause the video and work out if the black team can castle king or queen side, and most importantly, remembering why or why not. Let's check the answer. Let's look at black castling king side. Well, we can put that one to bed right away. How, you may ask? Well, the black king is still sitting on the square e8, so it hasn't moved anywhere. However, the black rook is sitting on the square g8, which means the black rook has moved. And once either the king or the rook have moved, that means you cannot castle on that particular side. So castling king side, not an option. Castling queen side, well, the rook is still on its home square. Hooray! The king is still on its home square. The space in between the king and the rook is clear. So let's castle. Unfortunately, we cannot castle in this position because of the sneaky knight sitting on b6. That knight keeps an eye on the c8 square. So if we were to castle, we'd want to land, moving 2 squares towards the rook, land on the square c8. And since a king can't go to any square where it will be in check, once again, we cannot land on that square. So the answer is we cannot castle either way. But remembering it is black to move, we might devise a plan in 2 moves time And as we see, the main reason we cannot castle queenside is because of that pesky knight. So one idea might be to simply chop off that knight, and on our next move, providing there's nothing attacking us, we could castle. Fantastic work. On to the next position. White to play. Pause the video and work out if the white team can castle, and remembering why or why not. Back again. Let's check the answer. Well, we've got the white king sat on its home square, looking very good. We've got the white rook on h1 sat on its home square. The white rook on a1 sat on its home square. Importantly, the space in between the king and the rook on h1 is free, and also the space between the king and the rook on a1 is free as well. So far looking good. Well, looks like we might be able to castle kingside. Let's make sure there's nothing attacking the following squares, f8 and g8. Oh, spotted the bishop controlling the f8 square, so that means automatically castling kingside is out of the equation. Let's check castling queenside. Is there anything controlling the square d1 or c1? Nope. And we notice, even though there's a bishop on h6, we have our own bishop nicely protecting us, so we can castle queenside. Superb job. On to the final position. White to play. Pause the video and work out if the white team can castle. Back again. Let's check the answer. We see the white king hasn't moved, still on its starting square, and so is the rook, still on its starting square. We see the space in between the king and the rook is free, and that means we should be able to castle. Wrong. Hopefully you spotted that sneaky bishop on a5, placing our king in check. What would be the best option to get out of check? Once again, pause your video. Hopefully you've realized that if the king runs away, it will get out of check, but once the king moves, you'll not be able to castle no more. Capturing is just not an option because we have no piece that can attack this bishop on a5. Therefore, the best option would be to block. Hopefully, you have found a number of ways. Let's look at a few of them. We have the little guy moving to the square c3 to block. We also have our bishop that can go to the square d2, our queen that can go to the square d2, our sneaky knight on f3 that can also go to the square d2, and last but not least, our little guy on the square b2, which can block. Remembering that the idea is to put one piece on the square, on any of the yellow squares, to block the check. The one I like the most here is the little guy. So moving it to c3, blocking the check. So on our next move, white will be able to castle. It's black's turn to move. Question: can black castle? Quickly pause your video and work it out. Back again, let's have a look. Well, we know by now to check the position of the king, and it is definitely on its home square. Let's check the position of the rook, definitely on its home square. Any space in between? I see acres of space in between. The square the king is supposed to pass through is d8 and c8. Anything controlling those squares? Not at all. That means we can castle. Or can we? Let's have a look. We see that sneaky queen acting just like a rook and is controlling the entire d file and the square d8, meaning the king cannot pass through that square, otherwise it'd be in check. So the answer is no, the black team cannot castle. Super awesome work. The more crowded the board, the harder it may be to see all types of sneaky pieces stopping us from castling. There are some useful things to remember. Are the king and rooks on their home squares? Is the space between the king and the rooks clear? Are there any sneaky pieces attacking the square the king needs to pass through? Is the king in check? Keep playing games and practicing, and you will be a castling boss in no time at all. Please like and subscribe, and see you all on the next video.